Thank you so much, Ida. Good morning and welcome everyone to this workshop highlighting the best practices in our community. And we're focused today on women in the workplace, the key to building resiliency and the role of businesses in supporting women and their families. This workshop is brought to you by our sponsor, JPMorgan Chase, and I'd like to thank them for making women in the workplace a priority before and after the pandemic, and certainly as part of this workshop discussion. This is a panel discussion format, and I'll introduce you to our dynamic and inspiring panelists here in a moment. We have 5 panelists and our opening speaker from JPMorgan Chase. And the reason that we have so many panelists is so that we can represent important perspectives on this issue, so that we can think about the entire woman, the whole woman in the workplace, not just professionally, but also in their personal lives as caregivers and many other roles that they play in the community. And we've only got 45 minutes for the workshop, so it's going to be a bit of a rapid fire question type format. But hopefully today, by representing all these different perspectives, we'll inspire you and we'll give you something to take back with you in your business community and in your personal and community life as well. I've copied a few links in the chat for you to think about because we don't have much time today. I'm hoping that you'll do some reading on your own and really think about this so that we can keep the discussion going after the workshop. And I would encourage our panelists as well as other people attending here today to do the same. If you've got a great article you want to share, or if you want to share your email so that you can keep the discussion going afterwards, please feel free to do that in the chat. And you'll have the opportunity, as Ida said, to ask questions through the chat and at the end of this workshop. And then after the workshop ends as well, if our panelists can stay on for a minute and you want to interact with them, we'll have a little bit more time at the end, even though it is rapid fire, to keep those questions asked and to get some of those questions answered. If you have some technical difficulties, our friends, Ida and others from the PJI, conference committee will also help you with some technical issues that you might have too. So I'm just going to put it out there. Investing in women's empowerment to fully participate in the workforce, it's not only the right thing to do for gender equity, but it's the key to our recovery and to building a more resilient community. Full utilization of our workforce and tapping into the unique leadership skills that we all know are there from women is just good business. But it's also good for our community and our economy. Not investing in women at this moment will create lasting harm for families that are struggling to get out of poverty and recover from this pandemic. And it's projected to cost us $1 trillion in global GDP. And will take another 130 years to achieve gender equality if we do nothing. However, investing in women in the workplace will, at this moment in time, potentially add $13 trillion in global GDP by 2030. We know that the pandemic has disproportionately affected women, especially women of color. We also know that women face the pressures of caregiving at home. So we're going to talk a lot about childcare and caregiving in this workshop as well. And it makes them especially difficult for women to re-enter the workforce and advance in their careers. So that push of job loss and that pull of caregiving has led to what we call the she session, and you may have heard this term used before. We all must work together and be hyper-focused on gender equity as we recover and we build. The business community has a very important role to play in this, in family-friendly policies, workplace protections, advocacy, fair wages and benefits, and leadership in the community and among other businesses in the community. So that's what we're here to talk about today, to highlight some of these great examples of how and why local businesses are making supporting women in the workplace and addressing their needs as professionals and caregivers a priority. So without further delay, I'm going to introduce our opening speaker and panelist. Tracy Rebar is a seasoned business professional with over 20 years of cross-functional experience in HR. She's currently the executive director and HR business advisor supporting the South Division of JPMorgan Chase's Consumer Bank Division. Madeleine Thakur is president of the Children's Movement of Florida. She oversees, wave at us as I introduce you, please. She oversees all outreach and communication efforts, including business engagement initiative Bosses for Babies that we're going to talk about here today as well, and leads the state level policy efforts aimed at increasing investment in high quality early learning, healthcare for children, and parent support. Alfreda Clark, wave at us, Alfreda, has devoted her career to providing children with optimal experiences that contributed to positive life outcomes. In her role as Center Director for Westlake's Early Learning Center with AdventHealth, she oversees the on-site clinic, comprehensive service programming, community outreach, and the school within a purpose-built community. Deidre Keller is the Dean of the Florida A&M University, FAMU, College of Law in Orlando. Dean Keller writes at the intersection of intellectual property, personhood theory, critical race theory, and the Constitution. Nicci Bucher has advocated for children throughout her 25-year career, and she's the District Vice President at the YMCA of Central Florida, and she oversees youth development programs and the operation of multiple centers, including the $2 million nationally accredited on-site child development center at the Walt Disney World Resort. Latria Graham is the president and founder of Graham Lake Branding, whose purpose is to build world-class purpose-driven brands. Prior to finding GLB, Graham worked in the male-dominated industry of sports in the NBA for 11 years. She recently made history as the first African-American woman to be elected as chairman of the board for Habitat for Humanity of Greater Orlando and Osceola. She's been the recipient of many leadership awards, including Onyx Women on the Move Award, and 2016 Woman of Distinction Award at Valencia College's Bridges to Success program, and many others. So welcome to everyone. As you can tell, this is a great panel that we have assembled here today and could represent a lot of different perspectives as we talk about this issue. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Tracy Rebar from JPMorgan Chase to kind of kick us off this morning. Tracy, have you been able to join us yet? I know Tracy was having some difficulties.
Leslie, she has not been able to join us, so go ahead.
Okay, well, we will get back to Tracy when she joins us. So Madeleine, I think you're
Hey,
up.
she's here. She just typed in the chat that she's here, and there she is.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Tracy,
sorry, everybody.
That is
terrible.
Quite all right. Tracy, you're going to hit the ground running today. I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off with this important discussion about women in the workplace.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad I made it at least for this, and my sincere apologies for some strange technical difficulties. You know, it's interesting. I've had some really interesting conversations lately about women in the workplace, women in our community, and all of the fantastic work that's happening with K-Ready and Bosses for Babies and just in our community in general. And from, you know, I can certainly speak from a JPMorgan Chase perspective and a me perspective. And I guess first I would say I am so proud to work where I do. I feel like we at JPMorgan Chase provide so much opportunity to our employees. I spent a lot of time in recruiting here, many, many years, and then into the HR advisor space. So it's really given me a phenomenal opportunity to see how we source people to come into organization, how we help them grow through our organization, and then also how we participate in our community. I think the number one thing I think about is we genuinely care about our people, and we genuinely care about our communities. Everything for us stems from our culture, everything that we do, whether it's how we work with our customers, how we train our people, how we work in our communities. You know, one of the things that we've done that I think has given us a tremendous amount of insight into our employees and our communities, we have something called Chase Chats, where we invite community folks in to talk about financial wellness and other subjects. We also, this last year in 2020, we started something called Courageous Conversations. And those were started after COVID, and then we saw a tremendous amount of social unrest throughout our country. And we brought people together and really gave them permission to be incredibly vulnerable and share their stories. And we have grown so much because of it. And we also have done a deeper dive in focusing how we think about mental health within our own organization and our communities. And I think that has also opened doors for people and given people, like I said, permission to bring their whole selves to work and to get help where they need it, which has been fantastic. One of the things that we have at JP Morgan Chase internally is something called business resource groups. And as it pertains to this conversation, I think too, one of which is called Women on the Move. I am a part of Women on the Move, and I think it's been really cool. They have 3 business focuses, and that is to help expand women-run businesses, to improve female financial health, and to empower female career growth. And we also now, in this last few years, have partnered with an organization called Fast Forward, and we now have this Fast Forward program, which really helps our employees to thrive both at work and at home, and kind of try to move away from this misnomer of you can't have a work-life balance, you can't be really successful at home and at work. I think one of the most fun things about Women on the Move, something that I really, and I was telling Leslie in some of our prep meeting that I've literally set a career goal for myself, and it is to be invited to Leadership Day for Women on the Move, which is now held annually at Radio City Music Hall. They shut the place down. They bring in, we've had Gwyneth Paltrow, we've had athletes, we've had activists, we've had authors. It's really been an incredible experience. And I was telling her that this last time we had a surprise guest visit, and at the very end, and it was on virtually, obviously, and I'm sitting here looking face to face with Oprah Winfrey, and I could not believe it. And so I just think like it's such a special opportunity to work at an organization that has the resources that we do and that attracts the talent. Whether it's internally or externally, we are always learning, we are always growing, and that's really exciting. And then just a couple other quick things. One, I personally in the Orlando area have had the opportunity to work in our community. We've worked with local high schools, elementary schools on thinking about how we educate our children for the future and help ready them for the reality of what happens when you leave school and have to come to work. We've also had partnerships with domestic violence shelters where we've done programs where we've had resume writing and interview experiences where we've been really thoughtful about how we kind of have bring them on site confidentially, put them through an experience. And we have actually made a couple of hires, although that was not the intent. The intent was to really teach them how to move forward with both financial wellness as well as a skill set and a resume to walk out the door. And then unfortunately, we have situations internally where our own employees are going through something like that. And we have moved employees into different states to ensure their safety. And so I think, again, working with our employee programs, that's been critical for us, whether we are in, individuals have situations, whether we have natural disasters and our, lowest income folks are struggling the most in how we help them. And then, of course, there was COVID, and I'll end with this. We really sharpened our focus during COVID on women, how we help women in small businesses survive, how we help our employees and our customers manage their personal finances, and then, of course, childcare. That was, for us, one of the most major things. I am a business advisor in the consumer branch, and of course, our employees did not have the luxury that many did in working from home. They were essential employees out in the workforce, and so we stepped in with additional discounts on childcare services, virtual tutoring services, even puppet shows virtually that they could sign their children up for so they could just get to, at least a couple hours of work. So again, I think that through our employee services with coping connections calls, therapy sessions, we've increased how we partner in our community. I just think it's tremendously exciting to have this opportunity today to hear from these women and what we do in our community to help the women and then ultimately the children succeed. So thank you, Leslie, for the time.
Thank you. And I have to get my finger speed in order to unmute myself whenever you kick it back to me. But that was so inspiring because JP Morgan Chase, even before the pandemic, was very focused on women in the workplace for all of the reasons that we just talked about. And I love hearing about how you pivoted and how did you call it? Sharpened your focus during the pandemic. And I'm excited to get some other examples from the rest of our panelists as to what they're doing to do the same thing. But you said JP Morgan Chase and you set a great and passionate and committed example of what we're here to talk about today. So thank you for that introduction. And you mentioned childcare, and Ida, in her introduction to me, talked about the K-Ready Community Project. And that's what the organization that I represent. And we are very focused on ensuring that every child gets a great start in life. And the setback of the pandemics, if we don't focus on that, and again, sharpen our focus on our commitment to early childhood and the mothers and the family leaders with early childhood, then it's going to have long-lasting harm in our community today, and not only the impact on the children, but also multi-generational. So it will have an impact on our ability to lift families out of poverty and to create resilient communities, all of the things that we're talking about. So with that, we're going to talk a lot about childcare and why it's so important to women in the workplace. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our next panelist and ask you a question. So Madeleine Thakur, this question's for you from the Florida Children's Movement. Why is early childhood at the center of this conversation about women in the workplace and community resilience? And how are companies that you've seen throughout Florida committing to supporting women and their families, especially as we recover and rebuild better from this pandemic? So give us some other great examples that inspire you and give you hope.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I'll be brief because I know
there you are.
You hear me well? So thank you for having me, and really thrilled to share this time. I think when you look at early childhood, it's central to the conversation because of what you just said, Leslie. It's two generation. When we focus on early childhood education and childcare, it allows women to participate in the workforce, where if you do not have a healthy and safe place to leave your child, you cannot show up to work. You cannot make an income to bring back to your family. But at the same time, if we are not investing in childcare that is really about early learning, then we are not preparing the future workforce to participate in the future. And so this is really critical, that learning is not something that magically starts when you turn 5 and enter kindergarten. We are learning from birth, and we need childcare environments that are nurturing, stimulating, educational. And I know there are others on this panel who can talk more about that. But I just think that you have to look at both sides of that to understand why this is so critical to community resilience. Again, because women who can participate in the workforce are bringing income and intangible benefits home, and early childhood lays that strong foundation. So I want to share just a few pieces of data. The Children's Movement ran a survey of parents late last year, asking them what they need from their employers and about childcare challenges. And we found that 6 in 10 respondents in a representative sample of Florida parents said that childcare issues have affected their ability to stay in the workforce or to be in full-time positions versus part-time. This goes up to 72% when you look at mothers. If you look across racial lines, it was 72% of Black families, 62% of Latino families. And so when we talk about resilient communities, that we want to be inclusive and have job opportunities that are accessible across the board, we need to recognize that employers who create environments that allow parents to be employed make a humongous difference for those families and for the children in our communities. So we at the Children's Movement are also leading the initiative Bosses for Babies that Leslie mentioned. This is really spreading the message that whether you as a company are investing in early learning centers in your community, sort of from a philanthropic lens, or reinvesting in your employees and providing the kinds of environments that allow parents to contribute, both of those are, it's sort of two different paths to promoting community resilience. We have seen corporations that are allowing volunteers to go in and read with children in preschool centers. This makes a big difference, but also corporations that increasingly, and this got a lot of attention in COVID, and I have to say, you know, looking at parents across the board, it's an issue for women, but when you have fathers who are also asking for flexibility and the time that they need to care for their families, it really helps the case for women and mothers in the workplace. And so when you look at family-friendly benefits that corporations are offering, it could be predictable scheduling, having, you know, at least 2 weeks notice of your shifts if you're looking at an hourly workforce. These are things that allow families to plan, that allow mothers, again, to participate in the workforce. So I'll leave it at that for now and leave it on to the other panelists, and look forward to addressing more in questions.
Thank you, Madeleine. That was perfect. And please, questions for any of our panelists, put them in the chat. Don't forget, and we'll get to it at the end. So next question is for Alfreda. AdventHealth has committed to investing in families in high needs areas, specifically in the West Lakes community here locally. So why was the Early Learning Center such an important element of AdventHealth's commitment to families in West Lakes? And I'd also like to give you the opportunity to kind of highlight some of the great things that you're doing at the Early Learning Center in West Lakes that support women and their families with either policies or practices or examples of things that you're doing there in healthcare and anything else that you'd like to highlight from the center perspective.
No, thank you, Leslie. And again, it's just an honor to be amongst women who are addressing this very high need and making sure that women in the workplace are getting the resources and the support that they need. In terms of AdventHealth for Children, the community, they do a community needs assessment biannually. And during that assessment, they were finding health inequities and high emergency department utilization in the 32805 zip code. And it inspired AdventHealth for Children to establish what we now know as the West Lakes Early Learning Center. This is coupled with recognizing that there were limited medical access points for families in the area when compared to other communities. So these two things together said, you know, where can AdventHealth start to assist and create an impact? And it sounded like the best step was in that early learning space, early learning coupled with medical access. And that's what the West Lakes Early Learning Center is. It's an early learning program for children who are 6 weeks through 5 years old that has a comprehensive services component. What that means is making sure that families get what they need beyond early learning. So it does also mean access to care with an on-site clinic that has pediatric access to all of the children that are here in the Early Learning Center and their siblings. But one step forward, we provide a medical access point for any pediatric patient. So from newborn to age 17 years old. We just celebrated we call it our first birthday. Yesterday was 1 year to the date that we opened with 28 children enrolled, and now we have 137 children enrolled. We opened the doors because we noticed in the immediate community that essential workers were in need of going back to work. And even though we were in the middle of the pandemic, there were needs that were here that had to be addressed. And some of the things that we provide for families outside of comprehensive services and the medical access and the early learning is an opportunity to have, we provide all diapers, all wipes, all formula. Families just basically have to get their child here. There's also opportunities for sliding scales for tuition, and also families who able to apply for school readiness options. So this part of what Westlake's Early Learning Center is actually a partnership as a part of a collective impact initiative that is spearheaded by Lift Orlando to drive investments into the area now known as West Lakes. Our lead donor is the Bainham Family Foundation that put in funding for construction and 10 years of support in operation. Our early learning component is done by Primrose as a partner with us. And we also utilize our Life Creation Kids curriculum for social emotional support for children as well. And this, with the residents of West Lakes, has really made this come into fruition. The second part of your question, when you talked about benefits that are provided for throughout AdventHealth, but also specifically to our teachers that are here, all of our teachers who are a part of the Early Learning Center are AdventHealth employees. So just when the pandemic came about, AdventHealth took a spring survey, spring 2020, and found out that 300 of their employees were in need of childcare. So what they did, and that's throughout the country, what they did initially is just jump right in and started to talk and work with partnerships, Bright Horizons to provide in-home care and some center access. The YMCA, Winter Park in downtown, was able to provide care for some of our children who were in need. Also, the Early Learning Coalition provided support to team members. Some of our other partner early learning centers, Lock Haven, they actually looked to convert the Forest Lake Church for 160 slots for children. Whatever needed to be done to support families who were working and needed childcare specifically. We also have discounts for staff children at the Early Learning Center, as well as our partners and our AdventHealth staff. Some of the other early on benefits that were a part of the pandemic response is early vaccine access to healthcare workers and to any forward-facing customer or client-facing roles. So all of our teachers in the Early Learning Center were given an opportunity to have vaccine access as early as December. COVID-19 pay. So when a department closes, or if there was an exposure, a potential exposure to COVID-19, when you went home, you were paid for your time because it's no fault of your own that the exposure has occurred, and wanting to make sure that there's no disruption in the liveliness, the livelihood of that family. There's a health and wellness incentive, which is one of my favorites, because you go and you take a biometrics and a full on just health assessment to see how you're doing, and you're rewarded as an incentive, pay for that. So that's huge to say, go and take a look at yourself and care for yourself and have that additional support for your family. There's Christmas bonuses, competitive pay rate, there's PDO, of course, insurance, health insurance options, tuition reimbursement, professional development, and discounts at retailers, and much more. So it's really taking a look at what the need is, especially for working family members, and how we can support them best, and listening to them to find out how can we remove all the barriers? What can we do to be supportive in each and every way that we can?
Thank you. Wow. I love hearing Alfreda speak, because her passion and the commitment from AdventHealth just shines through every time I hear you speak. So thank you for that. The next question, we're going to go to Nicci. So Nicci, how did the on-site Early Learning Center at Walt Disney World come to be? And how has it made a difference to the Disney cast members and the families that you work with? And then finally, I want to give you the opportunity as well to highlight some of the innovative practices that you have there at the Child Care Center run by the YMCA on Disney site.
Well, thank you, Leslie. And I'm listening to Madeleine and Alfreda, and I know the other ladies, and I'm so fortunate to be surrounded by dynamic women that are doing such great work, and not just in women in the workplace, but with children. And I'm actually taking notes in our own presentation, because I really get to echo so much of what they've already said in the initiatives. And Madeleine said, employers create environments for employees to stay employed. And although that's a little bit of a mouthful and quick to write, that's exactly what teed up this project. We're in year 17 now, so I'll say over 20 years ago, there was a discussion between the YMCA and Disney, where Disney identified, we need our cast members to have the opportunity to have childcare that is accessible. We need our cast members, from an attendance and dependability standpoint, of course, as an employer, to have opportunities for their children. So the work-life department and the YMCA, the work-life department at Disney and the YMCA came together to say, okay, how can this natural partnership come together? And with the YMCA specializing in youth development and spirit, mind, and body of children, it was a natural marriage and partnership. So again, over 20 years ago, this started, and there are so many complexities with Disney being such an enormous partner, and then over 60,000 employees, where we had to really build in those flexibilities for cast members in the child care offerings on site. So there are 2 locations open 365 days a year, 6 in the morning till 11 at night, and serving over 700 children. So when you're talking about the need for volume, just to be able to support the cast members, that's where the YMCA and Disney were really able to partner on 2 different sides of the property. The accessibility, the affordability, the flexibility, the hours of operation that's reflective of the company that we're serving was incredibly important. It is very atypical of childcare. And of course, Alfreda again highlighted so many things that we do to meet the needs of the company and the corporation that we're serving, so that we're able to provide that service to the families of that organization. So not just the hours reflective of the community, but the quality of childcare. When we are carrying the YMCA name and we're carrying the Disney name, we certainly want to demonstrate that we are not just simply taking care of your children while you're at work so you can work without worry, but we are also providing a extensive curriculum, Frog Street curriculum, where we have not just the math, the literacy, but the social emotional component, which is so important at any time and incredibly important now going through the pandemic and keeping children connected. Some of those flexibilities, offering backup care, drop-in care, so that if there is another primary source of childcare that families have, but grandma gets sick, or the neighbor who's keeping the children cannot do it that day in particular, we have a backup option where our cast members are able to drop off their children at the child care centers. Flexible schedules. I think Madeleine may have mentioned earlier, 2 weeks in advance, our cast members receive new schedules. And so how do we mirror that scheduling at the child care centers with, the scheduling at Disney, again, to be able to accommodate and support their workforce. Program offerings. I know we talked before about, we as moms and dads too, again, to echo that piece, but, there's always an element of guilt when we're dropping off our children somewhere else so that we can take care of ourselves and be able to work and so forth. And so offering programs on site so that they have dance, soccer, different activities that maybe with the scheduling that they have, they're not able to attend in the evenings and weekends. So offering those on site. And of course, we're accredited, nationally accredited at both locations. We provide all meals, breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner through the USDA food program with balanced nutritional components that are just essential, not only to our children, but of course, again, the Y echoing that healthy spirit, mind, and body. Again, echoing what Alfreda said, the employment component for the YMCA is huge. We have over 200 employees just with these 2 locations. 95% are women. in the workplace. So again, offering the discounted childcare, able to bring your children to work, which I did for many years here at the centers, is also a huge benefit. So, I want to leave time for the entire panel, but again, just really this corporate partnership, I can't echo enough how amazing Walt Disney World is as a partner. We continue to evolve as the needs of the cast members evolve, not just in a pandemic, but beyond. And, it really has been dynamic and an incredible experience.
Thank you, Nicci. I appreciate that. So we've got about 10 minutes left in the workshop, and one of our panelists, Deidre Keller from FAMU, is having some technical difficulties. She was going to talk about how women who are trying to advance their careers and they're pursuing either advanced degrees or certifications, or just take a moment to think about how difficult that is when you have children at home, or maybe you're taking care of an elderly parent, or just your personal, challenges that you have, as well as you might be working full time trying to advance your career. So think about, as an employer, women who are trying to advance their careers and move up, the challenges that they face, and what universities might be able to do working with companies and businesses to make that easier and to invest in women in the workplace. So with that, I'd like to then ask our last question to Latria. And Latria, we have you at the end here on purpose, because what I'd like you to do in thinking about, and maybe just give us a little introduction to your background too. I know I introduced you in the beginning, but I'd like for you to help us think about what's in it for the companies that might want to invest in women in the workplace, and how does it impact their brand, and how might they go about fully committing to promoting women in the workplace, and what do they get out of it if they do as well. So Latria.
Yes, thank you. And it's just been a pleasure to join such a great panel of women who are doing amazing things. And it's always good to hear about the different resources that are being provided to make women feel comfortable in this space. I'll start by saying from a why is it good for businesses to programs for women, as well as being socially responsible. As a brand activist, I'll start with saying that it does bolster your company image and builds positive brand reputation. And from positive brand reputation, that then leads to attracting top talent. So everyone knows that if you're known for not creating a culture that's inclusive and welcoming to any culture, that you will suffer from a talent perspective. So that's number one. Positive brand reputation is something that you get as a mutual benefit in creating social responsibility platforms. It also it empowers employees to leverage your corporate resources to do good in the community. So you're in a sense, creating a culture for employees to get actively involved in being a good citizen. And so that makes them feel good about themselves, which then boosts morale and their productivity. So I think that's essential in ensuring that from a productivity standpoint, in a business who wants to thrive and have a good culture, you want to make sure employee morale is good. The other thing that I want to point out that I think a lot of people have come to terms with, and one of the strategies that I help build for companies is cause marketing. And cause marketing is this ideal that there's a mutual benefit between doing good and doing business. And the evidence and the research is there that consumers make choices on or purchasing decisions based on your brand's ability to do good. And so I must admit, I'm guilty. I will be in a grocery store and I may decide that I'm going to go with Lysol instead of Clorox. If there's something in the news where Clorox is mistreating employees or not involved in the community, or I see more associated with the Lysol brand, I'm going to make that decision to purchase there. And so I think the modern day consumers are more conscious about their purchasing decisions. So I think that's critical for corporations to accept and realize that corporate social responsibility has a play into this, as well as the fact that your employees are brand ambassadors. So you want to make sure that you are being inclusive for women, and making them feel that they are a part of the brand, because they're going to go and talk to their families about it in their circle. And the new research does show that most consumers trust their family and friends about a brand more than marketing and traditional marketing and advertising. So it definitely is a strong business benefit. And like I said, in closing, it just leads to improving your employee morale. I think women, and I've been, like you said, I work with the NBA for 11 seasons. It does help in a sense if I know, because Nicci referred to it earlier, you feel this guilt. I have 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old. You have this guilt of, oh, I gotta leave this work function early, or I can't network, or I can't participate in this. And women do feel some guilt about it. So I think companies and corporations have to create mechanisms and policies and culture and practices to eliminate that for women, to make it more inclusive, and men too. And so I think moving and transitioning to help men understand that this role is a balanced role, and that it is not just a women function, although the statistics show that women do carry most of the burden when it comes to caring for children. So I'll stop there so we can get some more discussion in.
Thank you so much, Latria, and all of our panelists for talking about the different perspectives about women in the workplace, as well as why is it important for businesses to invest in women as we build resiliency, not just for their own company, but for the community at large. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A that I'd like to get to, and then, as I said in the beginning, we will have some time after the workshop to address any questions. If any of our panelists can stay after, I can certainly stay after and address any further questions. So please just continue to type it into the Q&A or the chat if you have any questions or want to stay after and interact for a bit. So in case anyone has to drop off, I'd just like to, again, thank all of our panelists for being here, and to especially thank our sponsor, JPMorgan Chase, for putting on this workshop and getting this important discussion started. And I hope that you will all look into some of the articles that we put in the chat in the beginning and really start to think about this issue and take it back and continue this discussion in your workplace and in your personal lives, because the moment is now to really double down and sharpen our focus on this issue, so that we build back better and create resiliency in our community. So the question is this, and I'm going to open it up to any panelists. So just raise your hand or take yourself off mute if you would like to address it. And this is from Cindy or Candy Stanford. Does anyone know of any businesses that are working with employees to address their own ACEs? They are piloting ACE-informed business with a local small business in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So does anyone know of anything going on here locally, or any businesses that are focusing on ACEs that their employees are experiencing?
To say, I know that AdventHealth is working on more of the behavioral and mental health space in terms of what families children as well as their staff members are facing. And so that's always in the forefront of the conversations. We receive a lot of just feedback and information about how you can always reach out to get the assistance that you need. Here at the Westlakes Early Learning Center, of course, being in a area that happens to have high needs, we are very, very focused on ACEs and making sure that we understand how that impacts young children. But also the other part of that is there's a possibility, of course, that ACEs was a part of the family unit. And how do we address the family comprehensively? How do we look at mom and say, what happened or what is happening that has caused maybe some of your decisions now? And then how can we support you? And how can we also then help you understand maybe the way your child is acting or the way that your child is communicating and relating to you and others. So I do believe AdventHealth for Children is very aware of ACEs and putting ACEs in the forefront of the communications and the interactions that we have with families, if that could help.
Thank you so much. That is very, very helpful. And I know that a lot of companies here locally, especially the hospitals, are very focused on mental health of their employers and the entire community. So we're at time now. So I'd like to ask Tracy if you'd like to have any closing remarks as our sponsor. And again, if anyone would like to stay after a few minutes, then
there's one question that's anonymous, and I just want to read it. As a Chase employer, I'm wondering as a Chase employer, I'm wondering if in helping women manage their finance, does Chase avoid encouraging women
Tracy's
to open
frozen on my end, at least.
No, I'm still on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm wondering if in helping women manage their
just
finance,
any final closing remarks as we close out this workshop.
Okay, there's a question.
I can hear you talking about the question. So if you want to give me the question, I'll go ahead and answer it. It's about Chase in particular. So go ahead. Ada?
Okay, I think you're wanting to address one of the questions about Chase in particular. And
yes.
Then Tracy, if you wouldn't mind, after you address that question, if you would just have some closing remarks.
No problem. No problem.
Did you hear the question, Tracy, or do you want me to repeat it?
I heard half of it.
So
one more time.
As a Chase.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Okay. So it says, as a Chase employer, wondering if in helping women manage their finance, does Chase avoid encouraging them to open a credit card as a way to manage their finance? Is the question specifically to you? And then when you're done answering it, if you would give us some closing remarks.
First, I want to say I'm not a banker, so I may not be the best person to answer that question. But what I could tell you is this. When each individual meets with a banker, what we try to do is make sure that we're really listening to understand what are the goals that that individual is trying to meet. Because we want to help you reach your lifelong dreams by really understanding how to manage your money. And so there may be instances where credit is a really smart decision, and there may be a credit card in particular, and there may be where there is a better product for you. So I would say it's not as simple as yes or no. It's really about the individual, and the best thing people should do is meet with their banker so that they can walk through their individualized needs. That being said, I want to say thank you to the women on the panel. I've learned a lot today. Just like Nicci, I was taking some notes. I just think it's a phenomenal opportunity to step back and pause and think about the most innocent of the people in this world and how we help ready them for their future. And the reality is we're not going to do that unless we're supporting the women in the workplace and the mothers and the fathers, right, as we work through. So I really appreciated everything that everyone said and just really happy to be here to listen today. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, everybody. And you saw I just took a picture because I want to share this moment. So this was such an honor, and thank you all for being here today. Again, we'll hang out for a few minutes in case anyone has any final questions, but that concludes our workshop for today. So thank you all for being here. Aida, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, everyone. If you have questions for Leslie and the team, please feel free to stay. I've put a link for a survey. We also would appreciate that you complete the survey. And technically, we're on a break, so you have time to ask questions to the panel.
Great. There were a couple of other questions, a couple that were focused on domestic abuse and survivors of domestic abuse, and some specific things that just feed tied to women in the when a woman and her children have to this move directly affects position. Has any conversation is providing a center and counseling for the male partner who has committed abuse rather than having the woman in the home?
So that's such an interesting question. What I can tell you is that as we've worked with our employee assistance program, so our EAP services, they work. So if we have a woman who raises her hand and says, I need help, we immediately connect that woman with the employee assistance program. She'll work directly with a therapist, a clinician, who will help her to understand what she wants. So it usually, what I have seen, has been that she's asking to leave. And like I said, we've helped. There are funds outside of JP Morgan Chase, grants and things that help women in this scenario. And our employee assistance program, those folks are helping connect those women and helping them work through that process. It is a great point to see what can be done on the flip side. But I think, again, that is really outside of the organization itself, and with programs in the communities, as well as, frankly, the police department as appropriate.
Thank you. Nicci and Alfreda, there's also a question about performing arts in your organizations. And there's specifically an organization called Olivia's Performing Arts Curriculum. So if you're interested in that, Maria Bryant is in the chat. But if you can talk a little bit about your centers and how important performing arts is, not just from I just had a conversation with someone about this the other day, Chris Brown, about this the other day, about how the role that performing arts plays in early learning. So if you could kind of talk about some of the things that you're doing at your centers and how important that role is, that would be great. Maybe we'll start with you, Alfreda.
So, we opened the center just a year ago, and of course we were in the midst of the pandemic. So it was a very interesting time, right? We were getting to know families quickly and saying, please drop your child at the door. So it was a very unique time, very sensitive time for children, for families. And with that, we finally have gotten to the place where families are able to come in and drop their children off and pick them up at their classroom door. So even though our balanced learning curriculum, creation kids curriculums, encompass a lot of the needs for early learning and for the physical activities, specifically with we kind of have a thumbs up component, which allows children to actually learn skills like how do you hop on one foot, how do you walk backwards, those kinds of things. We haven't really had the opportunity to start to implement performance arts opportunities. And we've been talking within some of the programs that AdventHealth has partnerships with to see what things that families are interested in. We've done a poll, and yes, those things like dance, karate, all of those exposures give children a different kind of confidence, a different kind of use of their bodies, of their skills, rhythm and dance. And so we haven't gotten to the point where we've actually initiated those courses, but would be interested in speaking with you a little bit more, Maria, and learning about your program. So we're thinking the summer is when we'll be able to incorporate some of those programs, because we don't want families to have to go one other place. And then the other part of our commitment is we don't want families to have to pay anything further. So we wanted to be able to have something on site, the soccer, the cheering, have something on site, because it's a huge part of early learning and finding out how to be in team sports and how to be able to follow directions in other areas. So we definitely would be interested in gaining your information, Maria, and I'll put my email address in the chat if that would be helpful.
Great, thank you. And there's been a few other comments in the chat about the domestic violence survivors question too. So I appreciate that follow up. Nicci, did you have anything to add on the performing arts question?
Similarly, in the current space now, granted, we have, historical partnerships that are currently paused. We have not started to bring families back into the building yet. So everything is paused as far as bringing, different types of services in. But we have had different curriculum in the past. We've used Readers Theater and other curriculum to help to enhance the performing arts component for our children. We're living in a space of cohorts right now, so we're not able to really intermingle as much as we used to, but we look forward futuristically to be able to resurrect those initiatives and some of the more interactive curriculum and spaces. Some of our partners, Chris Brown is very familiar to me, and we're on a couple of other groups we've talked about, reimagining that again. And to use reimagine, of course, connects to our Disney partners. We have some great cast members, not just in parents, but some of the departments have come over and helped to enhance the performing arts. But again, like Alfreda said, we may not be in that space today, but we're looking forward to sometime this year being able to partner again. So Maria, absolutely, I'll do the same and put my contact information in there, because who knows what the future holds, hopefully sooner rather than later.
And there's a lot of resources virtually online that are accessible to the families and the parents, and so that you keep that performing arts piece of it in there. And it's really tightly tied to literacy, confidence building, communication skills, all kinds of critical skills in the early learning space. So thank you so much. And it gives everybody something to think about. So I personally am a little out of time. So I'd love to wrap it up with that. And I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, unless Aida, you had seen some that you think that we should talk about before I go.
No, I think you covered them all. This has been an awesome presentation. I have placed a survey several times, and I keep doing that because I was told to do it, to make sure that people complete it. I do what I'm told. So I want to thank you all for being here. This has been a tremendous, powerful panel. I love it, women. Yes, I think it's wonderful. I've been around the sun so many times, but I still feel that it's important that we are out there and share our voices, and we are strong. So thank you, Leslie, for leading us. It's always such a pleasure working with you. And thank you, everyone, for coming and sharing your expertise. And please take care and be safe. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, please join us at 11. Thank you.